Emily Dickinson wrote the poem that begins, "I'm ceded, I've stopped being theirs," in 1862, a time of intense poetic output in her life, and also the time when she chose to become much more secluded in her social life. The three-stanza poem uses many of Dickinson's trademark dashes, carefully placed to add pause and ambiguity to the lines, and features a speaker breaking with her past and coming into her own. Dickinson especially uses royal imagery to show the speaker's agency and power over her own life as she chooses to break from her past associations, especially those connected to family and religious ceremony. Here's the poem in full. I'm ceded, I've stopped being theirs. The name they dropped upon my face with water in the country church is finished using now, and they can put it with my dolls, my childhood, and the string of spools. I've finished threading, too. Baptized before without the choice, but this time consciously, of grace unto supremest name, called to my full. The crescent dropped, existence's whole arc filled up with one small diadem. My second rank, too small the first, crowned, crowing on my father's breast, a half unconscious queen. But this time adequate, erect, with will to choose or to reject, and I choose just a crown. Though their approaches and conclusions might differ, most critical scholars agree that this poem is primarily about gaining agency, of using choice to exercise power. The final stanza especially denotes this, with lines like will to choose, and the imagery of a queen, both being crowned and choosing her own crown. While the word queen might seem fairly straightforward, the Emily Dickinson lexicon offers many related but slightly different definitions. Most have to do with the power and state associated with royalty, but one definition seems to undermine that, defining queen as a princess, a pampered female child, a little girl who is constantly attended. Then the lexicon provides the very line from this poem as an example of that definition. For a poem about conscious choice, having the will to choose one's future path, this definition seems a bit lacking, as if the queen really doesn't have power after all. So how are we to read this section? Here we turn to Dickinson's manuscript for the poem. Though all modern editions of this print one single version, the text we read previously, Dickinson actually included multiple variant text options for the poem, several of which are in this final stanza. Let's take a look. There are two small variants to the last few lines of this stanza. One changes will for power, and the other changes crown to throne. Neither variant affects the sense of the stanza, though. Both still picture the power of choice and employ royal imagery. A more significant variant for this discussion is in line 15, where Dickinson offers whimpering, dangling in place of crowned, crowing. In the dominant text, even though the speaker is a baby, she describes herself actively, crowing, and is still invested with some power, as she is crowned. But in the variant reading, she is instead weak and limp, passive, not crowned at all with the power a royal leader would have. The next line actually has two variants, for a total of 3 possible readings of this line. The first variant is the slight change from half unconscious to too unconscious, perhaps not so different. The second variant, however, changes the line much more. Rather than unconscious, the child is insufficient, actually lacking, not simply or partially unaware. These changes, especially when coupled with the variant readings from the previous line, picture a girl with far less power, a girl much more in line with the definition from the lexicon of a pampered child. Without examining these variants, the dominant reading might show a pampered queen, as the lexicon suggests. But when compared with the variants, the standard reading seems much more powerful, even when the speaker is a child. Rather than pampered and helpless, the queen is still crowing, still has power bestowed on her, and power that she then chooses for herself when she is older, in the crown or throne of the final line. Rather than negating her former self as passive, pampered, and lacking, as in the variant readings, the dominant reading now shows the power, actions, and worth that the speaker had all along, even if she was half unconscious of it. This reading enhances our understanding of the entire poem. The speaker may be finished using her first rank and the name she first received, but that doesn't mean she was worthless then, a pampered and passive little girl. She used those as she grew into her full power, her full name, crowned now by her own powerful choice and identity.